Hey everybody, just wanted to give you a quick explanation of essay number one. Since it's the first essay of the class, I thought you might like a little bit more explanation than just the as it's written and described. So if you want to navigate to modules, you will find the rough draft, a description of essay one in week 4. So if you open that up, this is what it will look like. So let's just kind of go through the basic description here, the assignment description, then I'll give you a little bit more to think about. So we'll just read this section right here. So your task in this first essay will be essentially to write an approximately 4-page, that's typed double-spaced, essay that analyzes one or more of the first 3 films that we will have watched, The Lodger, Blackmail, The 39 Steps, from this class that interest you. So any of those 3 films that interest you. For our purposes, you might consider analysis to be a product of asking how and why questions that intrigue you about the film. So, for example, how does Hitchcock create suspense? Or how does it play a significant role in the film? Or how does Hitchcock's use of recurring visual motifs amplify his themes? Or how does Hitchcock develop a certain theme? For example, the theme of appearance versus reality. Or why does Hitchcock use something like a MacGuffin? You might also think of analysis as an examination of the parts of a film. For example, an examination of certain scenes, certain images, certain characters, certain motifs, and so on, to see how they work together to make up some quality or effect of the whole. So, how does, for example, a motif relate to a particular mood or a theme in the narrative, or to a particular main character, or to a tension between seemingly contradictory motifs? So the idea is to take something kind of specific in the film and then relate it to a larger part of the whole. So just that description, I think, will give you a sense of essentially that the essay is pretty wide open in terms of topic. You really just need to limit yourself to one of the first 3 films that we will have watched, including the next film on the schedule, which is The 39 Steps. And I realize you haven't watched that one yet, but it certainly is a possibility if you would like to write about that film rather than The Lodger or Blackmail. One other thing I wanted to show you as a resource, this is also in module. So if you're in week 4, I'm going to Bordwell and Thompson, writing a critical analysis of film right here. This is basically a reading. It's from David Bordwell and Kristen Thompson. They're 2 really wonderful film scholars, historians, writers, professors. And the reading that they give here about how to write a critical analysis is something that will be really helpful for you in understanding what I mean by an analytical essay about a film and kind of what it should look like or what it should do. For this particular reading, I'm not asking you to include it as one of your reading journal entries or to take any notes on it or write any kind of written response. It's essentially really just a resource for you to reference as you're thinking about your essay. So I'd really encourage you to just read this piece here. It's only 4 pages long, and to really just take into consideration what they say as you are writing your rough draft, and really take into consideration too how they're defining film analysis and how they discuss structuring a film analysis essay. Just a few more things to kind of relative to that reading. Mostly take from the reading the idea of what analysis means. So, analysis really looks at the parts of a film and then draws a conclusion about those parts and what they might mean and how they point to some larger idea or purpose in the film. An essay doing a film analysis is not a film review. And now, a film review makes a judgment about a film. It's kind of about whether the film is good or bad. It's kind of this thumbs up or thumbs down. It gives a film a star rating. But in an analysis, you're not telling your reader whether the film is good or bad or whether they should see it or not. Rather, analysis looks at something that is interesting or significant or worth discussing within the film itself. And it doesn't judge the film, so to speak. It doesn't rate the film. The goal of analysis is to help the reader understand something about a given film and to see something new or see something interesting about it that they might not have seen before. A good film analysis can actually show us something really interesting about even a bad film and show us that that film is really worth thinking about for some reason. Now, one thing you can do is you certainly can analyze more than one film in your essay. So if you want to say do some kind of analysis of both The Lodger and the Blackmail, that would be okay. But you should really be careful not to, for example, merely compare and contrast the films. Most students actually find this essay a little bit easier to write and easier to stay focused if they just focus on one film. And I'm not saying you can't write about more than one of the first three films, but you might want to think about starting with one film, and then if you really want to expand it, you can do that. I've given you these images here just of these three staircases in Blackmail because that's kind of one example of something a potential essay could do. How does Hitchcock use staircases in his film to link to some kind of larger theme? And I'm not totally sure of the answer of that, but I think each of these situations are quite interesting in terms of what's happening to this character and sort of how she's feeling and what stage of the story she's at. So that's just sort of one imagistic example of how you can take a really kind of smaller part of the film, like just the use of staircases and the staircase motif, and link it to some larger idea. Something else I wanted to show you, and if you go back to modules week 4, you'll notice that there's an example of student writing from Sarah Williams. So if you click on that, you can basically see an example of a really good analytical essay about a Hitchcock film. This is one of my former students. She wrote it a couple years ago, and I asked her if I could show her essay as an example, and she really kindly agreed to allow me to use it as an example for future students. Her essay is really an excellent analysis of the theme of marriage and gender in the 39 Steps, this film we're going to watch pretty soon. And you are absolutely welcome to read Sarah's essay if you would like an example. Her essay is a little bit longer, actually, than your essay needs to be. But in terms of analysis, it is, and what she does in terms of analyzing this theme of marriage and gender in the 39 Steps, that basic thing of what she does in analysis is something you can aim for. She also makes a really clear claim about the 39 steps at the beginning of her essay, and then she demonstrates that claim with lots of evidence and scenes and images from the film throughout her essay. Just a side note, if you would decide to write about the 39 steps, you might want to read Sarah's essay a little bit later on, just because sometimes when we read something about a film, it's easy to let that sort of dominate our own thinking about it, and you might want to explore your own thoughts before you read Sarah's essay. If you appreciate her essay and there's some ideas in there that you can relate to your own essay, you're certainly welcome to quote her essay. You just need to make sure that you cite it properly with MLA citations and that sort of thing. Now, normally, if this were a face-to-face class, I'd have you each give each other peer feedback on your rough draft in small groups. But it's a little bit tricky, of course, in this online environment. So one thing I'm doing with this first essay is I'm making the peer review optional. So if you, after you write your rough draft, if you would like to do a peer review, you may do so and get extra credit for that. I do think peer review is a really valuable activity. I'm not going to require it of you, but again, if you would like to do it, that's an option for you. So if after you write your rough draft, you would like to do a peer review, just let me know and I will pair you with another person who would like to do a peer review, and you will essentially trade drafts with each other, give each other written feedback, and then you will get extra credit for that feedback that you give each other. One other note too, I'm going to be marking these rough drafts that you turn in just complete or incomplete in terms of a grade, and then it's your final grade that will get the percentage grade, the letter grade. But the rough drafts are just complete, incomplete. And even though the rough draft is not graded per se, in order to receive full credit on your final draft, you do need to have turned in a rough draft and received a complete on that. One other note, I'm not going to be giving feedback on your rough drafts, but or I'm not going to automatically give feedback, but if you would like some feedback from me, I would be happy to meet with you to discuss your essay. You just have to make sure that you do that sometime before the final draft is due, and just get in touch with me, let me know. We can set up an appointment. We can talk on Zoom or we can talk on the phone. Any way you would like for me to get some feedback to you about your essay, I'm happy to do that. You just need to reach out to me and let me know. One other reminder too, for this essay number one, you do actually have the option to revise this essay. So once you have turned in the final draft and you received a percentage grade and a letter grade on that, and you're not super happy with the results on that, you may you may revise it and turn it in for a replacement grade. And you just need to get that revision to me by the end of the quarter. So just know that that's an option for you. As always, of course, please make sure that you get in touch with me if you have any questions about this first essay. And I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what you all have to say in this first essay about one of these three films.